There I am. All right, so we're live. A lot of questions coming in already, which is great to see. I hope everyone had a great weekend, and I'm really excited to help you and try and answer as many questions as we can. So let's get on to it and let's see what I can do. Just a reminder, today we're going to be answering fitness questions. We've already got 1 or 2 questions in about nutrition and about some comeback from injuries. So generally, I might be able to help with those questions, but really we should be asking our specialists. We've got Sean and Jared on for injuries and nutrition this week, or the other way around. And we've got Barney, he's going to be dealing with the psychological side of things as well. So I'll try and answer the football fitness specific questions today. Okay, so let me see what's coming in and see how I can help. Okay, so this one's one that's in relation to an injury, but I can help with the last part of it. So when can you introduce anaerobic fitness work? Well, from day one, if it doesn't involve the lower body. So I always talk about keeping training loads high and trying to keep fitness as high as we can when we're in a period where we have an injury, as that's something that helps us get back to match fitness so much quicker. So there's no reason why you can't do anaerobic fitness in some form from day one. So a favorite of mine is to use battle ropes while you're seated, or any boxing type work can be done as well. So there's no way that you should stop completely doing any anaerobic work or any fitness-based work. It just shouldn't involve your lower body until a physio or medical professional would advise you that you can do that as running-based work. Okay, so really simple one. Never stop doing anaerobic work, and that way you don't have to start again. Okay, so this one coming from a youth footballer who at the moment can't train or do simple activities without any pain. Straight away, you need to try and seek medical help, okay? Go see a doctor, go see a physio. A physio might be better in this situation. If you see a very general doctor, sometimes they'll give you the advice just to have pure rest, which in this situation might be a good idea actually, but it's potentially better to see a physio who's got an understanding of the needs of youth footballers. If you can't do any simple activities without pain, for sure, I would stop doing whatever you're doing and get to a medical professional straight away. Okay, there's no point doing more training and continuing putting yourself into more pain, because all you're going to be doing is low quality training. You're probably not going to be improving that much, and you're just prolonging the amount of time it's going to take for you to get back to match fitness. So definitely stop what you're doing and get to a physio as soon as you can. This is an interesting one. So the question is, do brain training websites like Lumosity or Brain HQ, I haven't heard of those two before, but do they work for football players? So This is quite an interesting one. It's quite a new area. I've seen conflicting research before when it comes to simple things like reaction times. So I remember seeing a study about elite tennis players compared to regular people and their reaction times to a certain stimulus. I think it might have been a dot on the screen, and they had to click something or like a space bar to register they've seen it. And the average reaction time was the same in elite tennis players than it was in regular like age matched populations. So there was no real difference in terms of the reaction times. But what came out of that is, how can tennis players possibly react to serves that are going hundreds of miles an hour, 130, 140 miles an hour, sometimes even more? So how could they react to that if they don't have better reaction times on paper? And one of the ideas that was put behind it was that they have such good processing of what they're seeing in front of them. So there might be tiny cues that the tennis player on the other end of the court would give that would show them what type of serve was coming over the net. And that way they could react. On the other hand, I saw a conflicting piece of research, and it was done with elite sprinters, or it might have been sub-elite sprinters, but in research, sub-elite was probably sub 11 seconds anyway. So for most of what we're used to is very, very fast. And they actually had faster reaction times in response to a noise. Obviously, the way you start a race at the track is a gun will go off with a noise, and then the sprinters will start sprinting. And they actually had better reaction time. So not 100% sure, obviously, whether having better reaction time either one exists in certain populations, and two, I'm not sure if it would help you on the pitch either. I don't think it will do a detriment, but I probably wouldn't spend too much time doing it, because if your memory gets a tiny bit better or your reaction time gets a tiny bit better, if you can't read the game in front of you, which is always extremely context specific, then it's probably not going to help you that much. So you might find that the best defensive midfielders can read the game so well and see what's in front of them. They can make a lot of interceptions. And that's not going to come from guessing or diving in a certain direction. It's going to come from being in that situation so many times before and successfully being able to read the game. So I'm not sure that playing the game is going to be any worse, and probably is going to be better for the mental side of the game in this respect. So have fun with these websites. Maybe if you're on a train or in a car and you've got an app on your phone, go for it and use it. It might help, but I don't think it's going to make a huge difference to your performance. Okay. This is a simple one. For sure, you can use a massage gun on your biceps and triceps. Pretty much most areas are fine to use a massage gun on, as long as you're not smashing into the joint or anything, any passive tissues really, anything like bone and tendon or anything that feels weird or feels in pain, then you can use a massage gun on anything like that. Biceps, triceps are no different, okay? Okay. All right, so we got a question about building strength via bodyweight exercises, and is it true that you shouldn't go over doing 10 reps? In terms of bodyweight exercises, you probably need to go over 10 reps most of the time. Otherwise, you won't build very much strength. Doing 9 push-ups or 8 push-ups, if your maximum is, say, 40 or 50 push-ups, is not going to help you that much. So if you're looking to build strength, you're probably going to need to do things like add tempos. So you might need to go slow down. You might need to add pauses. You might need to increase the number of reps, because otherwise you're going to find it tough to progress. So I don't believe that you need to keep it under 10 reps for that. If you're looking at producing power, say if you're looking at an explosive push-up, like a clap push-up, or just an explosive push-up where you're throwing yourself off the ground as high as you can, then it's probably a good idea to limit the amount of reps you're doing, just to make sure good quality is there. Because if you're doing an explosive exercise, you can only do that for a certain period of time before the speed drops off. And if you were to have a barbell tracking device, which are quite common out there these days, you'll see that after 3, 4, 5 reps of something explosive, the speed will start to slow down. So if you're looking to train power, definitely keep the reps lower. For strength, you can definitely increase the reps over 10 reps when it comes to bodyweight exercises. When it comes to pure strength in the gym, you would definitely want to be under 10 reps, but that's because the external loads would be much, much higher than you can put on your body using only your body weight. Okay. Okay, so this one coming from Christian about if you can use a light ball session on a rest day. And I would say for sure you can. You could call it active recovery if you want. You can go out and you can be on the pitch. You can do a quick warm up and you can do 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes on the pitch on a rest day, as long as the intensity is not too high. So if you limit the amount of time and you might plan roughly in advance what you're going to do, so you don't end up being out there for 3 hours, it's definitely going to be a good thing. So just don't be out there too long. Probably 30 minutes is good enough. Make sure you plan in advance, because everything has a load, okay? So if you go out and you're out there for an hour and a half, even if it's an easy session, it means you're not going to be fully recovered for the next day. So you can go do a ball session, but keep it very, very short and don't overdo it. Otherwise, it's not a rest day anymore, and you're just going to negatively impact your training as you go through the week. So definitely don't overdo it there. Okay, so this is an interesting one around ice baths or cold water immersion, and at what age it's safe to do. This is an interesting one because I don't believe much research has been done with youth athletes and ice baths or cold water immersion. What I would say is that ice baths generally are too cold. So if you look at the research, they don't need to be sub-zero. Off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure. So I've used ice baths extensively in tournament settings, but I don't on a week-to-week basis. So it's not on the top of my head. But I think we've got an article out there, and I'm going to guess that it's between 5 to 10 degrees. That's what my guess is. And I can find out and we can put it on this video after. So it doesn't have to be as cold as you think it is, which means it's probably going to be safe for youth athletes if it's something they want to do and something they think is going to help them in the very short term. So I don't think it's going to be too safe as long as it's not excessively cold. What I would ask, though, is why do you want to use ice baths as a youth athlete? So ice baths or any type of cold water immersion or a lot of different recovery, passive recovery methods are things that are going to help you possibly perform better the next day, but potentially they're going to blunt the adaptation. So with hypertrophy, add in muscle as a really obvious example. If you want to cause hypertrophy, you're probably going to have to do a large amount of volume, which is likely going to cause some muscle breakdown. And that's one part of the process that might help to trigger our body to produce and build more muscle. So if we do a high volume session in the gym and we do many, many sets of 10 on whatever we're doing, and we have that soreness and that inflammation, and then we go and get in the ice bath, that inflammation is going to be reduced. So in the short term, today and the next day, I might feel a little bit better and less sore. But then potentially I'm going to not be able to build as much muscle as I would have done due to the fact that the response that I've given my body is now less than what it should have been if I didn't get in the ice baths. So ice baths that are not excessively cold are probably safe for youth athletes if they want to get in them and if they're under supervision. But I would question why you're doing them. And I would only really use something like this if you're playing a game the next day and it's extremely important. Otherwise, I would tend to stay away from ice baths as a youth athlete. Okay. This one's around sleep, which is one of my favorite subjects because I think it's huge. So this athlete sleeps 4 to 6 hours a day and always keeps improving fitness scores on the pitch. So is that safe? So sleep is really important. And if we don't get over 7 or 8 hours of sleep, we have a much higher chance of injury and we have a much higher chance of illness. So if you sleep 4 to 6 hours a day and you want to be the best player possible, those two things don't match up very well. So if you want to be a player that's at this level, you need to behave like a player at this level. And sleeping 4 to 6 hours is not going to help you improve massively. So you might be improving your fitness and sprint training scores in the short term. Depending how old you are, that might just be due to regular maturation. If a child at 10 years old sits down, at 16, if they don't do any exercise or any football during that, their fitness scores will be better as they're just growing up and becoming more mature. So potentially these gains are age related, but I'm not sure how old you are. In terms of it being safe, it just depends what the risk is, right? So I wouldn't say it's unsafe, but the less sleep you get, the higher risk you are, like I said. So I would definitely try and get to bed before 4 a.m. Okay, it's quite extreme. And maybe you can get away with it in the short term, but in the long term, probably not going to be the best idea if improvement is really important to you. Okay, so can we improve our reaction time through reaction games? I really love using on the pitch partner reaction games, and they can be with a ball or without a ball. So anything that causes you to need to react to a stimulus from an opponent is going to be fantastic because it feeds into what we mentioned earlier when it comes to reading the game. So even if you're playing like a tag-based game or an it game or whatever you call it where you're from, it's going to be useful because it's real-life agility that you can go out and will transfer onto the pitch. So it's very similar to what we do. When we're defending against a winger and we don't want them to go past us, obviously we have to react to what we're seeing in front of us. So we get a visual stimulus and then we have to process that and we have to decide what our decision is. And then we have to make that decision. And often that process happens multiple times as we constantly have to adapt to what's in front of us. You can't just make a decision and stick to it. So reaction games are really important and really useful, especially when they involve a partner. So grab a friend, grab a teammate before training. If you're a coach, at the end of a warm-up or even at the start of a warm-up, you can do reaction games in small spaces. They're going to be a lot of fun for players and they're going to be really useful and transfer over to the pitch. Okay. Okay, so we got a question about Cristiano Ronaldo as a teenager. And I'll hold my hands up. I've got no idea what Cristiano Ronaldo did as a teenager. And really, I've got no idea what he does now, obviously, because he's not going to project everything that's in his training schedule to the world, because it might not be that interesting. It might be what everyone else is doing, but he might be doing it extremely well and extremely detailed. Or maybe he does have some tricks up his sleeve, but I think it's probably unlikely. So we have no idea what Cristiano Ronaldo's schedule was like as a teenager. I think one of the key things that's highlighted in the MatchFit programs, especially when you look at the testing and tracking, is that really the comparison is where you are on day one to where you are at the end of the program. So I really wouldn't worry about anyone else's physicality or anyone else training schedules because it's so context specific. So if you have 10 hours a day at school and then you have to walk an hour to school and you have to walk an hour home, you can't possibly have the same training schedule as someone that lives and sleeps in a football academy. And that doesn't mean that you have to go out and train at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. It just means that you have to find a schedule that's appropriate for you in your situation. So we really don't know what he did, but like I said, you need to focus on your situation. What's the best possible way for you to get as much high intensity training into your week as possible? And to do that, you need to allow sufficient recovery. Otherwise, everything just ends up being at this kind of middle of the road, not really hard, not really easy. And you can never train hard and you never end up training easy. So you need to make sure you think about your schedule and what's best for you, and don't worry about anyone else's training schedules. Okay. So we've got a question around body fat and performance. So as I just mentioned, everything is individual when it comes to performance. In sports that involve sprinting, obviously being a lighter weight is important because if you have less mass to move across a certain distance, it's going to take less force to do that, or you're going to be able to do it quicker. So potentially having a low body fat is a good idea for speed. However, you obviously need to think about what you need to do in your position. So if you're a center back and you need to have a relatively large frame, you need to hold off big strikers, then having extremely low body fat might not help you achieve that goal. So you might be 0.01 faster over a 30-meter sprint, but if you can't hold off a really strong striker and they're going to roll you and then you're going to get scored on all the time, then your body fat probably doesn't matter that much. So I would worry about decreasing body fat if it's something that is, if you believe you're overweight, then might be a good idea to try and reduce your body fat. If your body fat is in a reasonable range and you're not classed as overweight, then I would not worry too much over your exact body fat percentage, as it's probably not something that's going to help you that much. So like I said, it's important to have a low body fat if you want to be purely fast. But there are many different things in a football match, and you want to make sure that you have good energy availability as well. So if you're constantly dieting just to get a certain number of body fat percentage, then potentially you won't have the energy for training in the gym or training on the pitch. So I wouldn't just go for a number. I would find out what your situation is. So does your physical profile meet the needs of your position at the level you're playing at? And if not, you might need to address it. So quite a simple one. Don't just try and get a body fat percentage number because someone else has it, or someone else tells you that you need it. Think about where you are, and then you can address what you need to do. Okay, we've got a question around sprint drills. So should we do sprint drills for sprinting mechanics like A skips, B skips, power hops? So any exercises like this are tools that can help give you context for a movement and can help you get in some better positions, okay? So just using something like an A skip probably won't make you incredibly fast compared to where you are now, but maybe you'll get into some positions during the A skips, which is going to transfer over to when you're sprinting. Maybe that will happen. Potentially, if you have intent in that A skip, say, for example, if you're working on really quick switches, potentially that's going to be something that transfers over to when you're sprinting. So any drills for sprint mechanics can be useful, but I would just make sure that the intent is there. Just doing an A skip mindlessly might be fine for a warm-up, but if you expect it to really help you be much faster, then I think you're going to be surprised when it doesn't, okay? So when it comes to sprinting, we can tend to put people in kind of boxes, okay? So we might have a team of 20 players, and we might find that there's one group which has a specific fault. Let's just say when their foot hits the ground during acceleration, their heel collapses and they have a full foot contact. So we can group those athletes together and we can give them specific sprint work that will help them. We might have a group that's not bad, but might need some tweaks. And we might have a group that's pretty good. So potentially we can give all of these groups different work, or potentially we can give a team the same work to do, but just give different focuses to the different groups. So it's quite individual and you have to have intent with what you're doing. So make sure that you identify what your issues are. We've got some good videos on sprinter mechanics on the MatchFit YouTube you can check out. And that way you can try and identify what some of the issues you're having are. And then you can definitely do some of these drills with a specific intent, and that's going to give a specific outcome. If you just do the drill, it probably won't have that much of a big impact, other than maybe be a good warm-up. Okay. So this one's around, should you foam roll your IT band and your pelvic bone? So no reason to foam roll your pelvic bone. Obviously, a bone is very hard and very dense, and you're not really looking to make any changes to bone, apart from possibly we're going to improve our bone structure through resistance training, but that's not something we're looking at here. And should you foam roll your IT band? Probably not, okay? Not that your IT band's going to explode if you do this, but it's really tough to make changes when it comes to the IT band. The IT band's incredibly rigid. There's a study that we always talk about when we look at questions like this, and an IT band, I think, was hung. Okay, so like a cadaver, a dead person's IT band was hung, and I believe it was 900 kg that was hung onto the IT band. And after 24 hours, it increased in length by 1 inch. Okay, so it's very tough to make changes in anything like the IT band. But what we should look to do if we do have IT band syndrome or any issues like that, then what we can do is roll the muscles that actually pull on the IT band. So that might be causing an issue. So TFL is a muscle that sometimes, if it's tight, can pull on the IT band and cause some pain much lower down the chain. So you can Google TFL, TFL hip muscle, and it will come up and you can see where that is. And what you can do is foam roll that muscle, but probably no need to roll the IT band. You're probably not going to make any changes and you're going to be in a lot of pain. So if you can avoid being in that pain, then definitely do, and probably avoid that, okay? Okay, so this question's, what muscles are used while you're shielding the ball from another player? So basically every muscle in the body is going to be important for this one. So you need good lower body strength and you need good upper body strength to do this, okay? So general compound exercises in the gym, like squats, trap bar deadlift, any upper body exercises like bench press, chin-ups, rows are going to be helpful, as it's going to give you general strength that's going to help you shield the ball from the player. There's probably not one muscle that's really important for this. We just need to have the ability to maintain our position and not have our position deformed by another player, okay? So we need to be rigid, we need to be stiff. So general compound lifts are going to work, and potentially we can do some isometrics that are going to be helpful as well. I wouldn't think about doing really high intensity isometrics for this. Usually we think about exercises where we're pushing upwards that we can do isometrics with. For this, what I would tend to do is some landing mechanics exercises. So after doing a box jump, you could drop off a box. And if you hold the position on your landing, and maybe you'll get a friend to bump you with a Swiss ball or something like that, and you have to be really rigid and maintain the position. So there's some extra things you can do, but general compound lifts are going to be the most important thing. And then you can add some drills where you can hold your position and resist after having a movement. Okay, so we don't get many questions about this, but it's actually something that's really important. So should we practice diaphragm breathing to increase our performance? I would probably say yes, for sure. It's obviously very low cost and very easy. Definitely before a session, diaphragm breathing is a good idea, especially if your commute to the gym or commute to training or a match has been stressful. So if you finish work and drive through traffic and arrive at training, you're probably not going to be in the best state of mind, and you might not be best able to perform physically, okay? So one simple test where you can see if this is useful or not, okay? You can just get a friend to help you out. So if you hold your arm up at an angle and you get your friend to push your arm down whilst doing lots of kind of chest breaths, okay? So really shallow breaths. If you were to take 20 breaths like this, okay, if you were to do 20 breaths like that, really shallow chest breathing, and then get your friend to push your arm down and you have to try and resist it, that would be your pre-test, okay? Then if you were to take 5 or 6 really deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, if you put your hand on your belly, okay, and you can feel that rise and fall dramatically, and then do the retest, you'll probably find that you're much, much stronger. So obviously I've told you that you're going to be stronger, and that might have an impact on it psychologically, but be really open-minded and try and hard as you can, and you'll probably find there's quite a large difference. So when we do breathe from our belly and not our chest, and we do that well, our performance is probably going to be higher. Now, when it comes to during the game, I would tend not to think about breathing too much because you're probably going to get distracted. So potentially diaphragm breathing is going to be good before training or in the gym in between exercises or before your session. Potentially it's going to be useful in between any recovery periods. If you're doing a stamina session or a sprint session, then it's probably going to be really useful for you. Even if the ball goes out of play during a game, if you think about belly breathing, it's probably going to be useful. I wouldn't take it to the extreme that when you're dribbling, you need to be belly breathing and focusing on your breathing, because you're probably going to mess up whatever the important thing you're doing is. So definitely useful at many, many different times. It takes practice. One of the best ways, if you're not sure how to do it, is to just lie on your back completely flat and put your hand just over your belly button. And if you inhale for as long as you can and then exhale out of your mouth as long as you can, that's a really good way to practice. And then it becomes a little bit easier while you're standing up. So really good question. And it's something we should all practice much, much more. Okay. So we've got questions really about energy systems here. So what's the difference between anaerobic fitness and aerobic fitness? So anaerobic fitness is when we don't have a supply of oxygen to the muscles while we're exercising. And aerobic fitness is when we do have a supply of oxygen to the muscles. And basically, when we don't have a supply of oxygen, so when we embark on a sprint over 5-6 seconds, our body doesn't have time to produce that energy. So we use our glycolytic energy system, or we use our phosphagen energy system. There's a couple of different names, okay? So it might be called the phosphagen energy system or the phosphocreatine system, wherever you are, okay? And that would be a very short period of time. Then if it goes a little bit longer, say if we end up running the full field and back again, and it takes a minute or a minute and a half where we're constantly working, we'll shift to the glycolytic system. And say if we're doing a long, slow distance run and we're continuously running at slow speed, after 4 minutes roughly, we're going to switch and we're going to be doing aerobic exercise at that stage, okay? And that's going to be the oxidative energy system. So sometimes they have different names depending what website or what book you look in, but they're essentially the same thing. It's just how our body produces energy. So usually we think about anaerobic fitness for football. We think about lots of short bouts of exercise interspersed with short rest, okay? So they're the main differences, and it just really relates to the energy systems that we use. So the aerobic energy system is important for a footballer, obviously, as a game lasts 90 minutes, but we don't think about training that energy system by long, slow distance running. Okay, we've probably got time for one more question. So will weights on the spine compress you? For instance, a heavy back squat. So in the short term, when you take a bar on your back, even if it's in a good position, it will compress your spine in the short term. Generally speaking, unless you're squatting 400 kg on a regular basis, it's not something that's going to have a long-lasting effect, and it's not something that's going to make you shorter. Generally, there's some rumors and kind of misconceptions out there about weightlifters, and especially Olympic weightlifters, being short due to the fact they lift weights, when in actual fact, basically the shorter you are, the easier Olympic weightlifting is, because it means that you don't have to move the bar as high. So if I have the same strength as someone who's 4'2" and I'm 7'8", I have to lift the bar comparatively much, much higher. So they're probably going to be better than me. Okay. So that's where the misconception comes from. If you do heavy back squats and you are really worried about this, some people will recommend hanging from a pull-up bar. So just being in a full hang for 30 seconds to a minute. And that can actually ease some back pain symptoms in some people. Generally in healthy people, though, who don't have any lower back issues or anything like that, I wouldn't worry about any negative impact of doing any axially loaded. So any exercises that do load on the back or on the front, like a back squat or front squat, I wouldn't worry about any of those issues. You're probably safe to do that type of training, really, unless you're squatting 400 kg for 10 sets every single day. Really not something I would worry about. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you joining. It was a lot of fun. If you've got any other questions, you can find us in a lot of different places. So you can get us in the MatchFit squad groups. That's probably one of the best places to get us. Okay. So I'll be on next Monday for any more fitness questions. But if anything else comes in the meantime, feel free to just get us on the MatchFit squad groups. Okay. I hope everyone has a good night or good morning, depending where you are. And I'll speak to you all soon.